Joe was scared, she knew, but he didn't want her to know. His hands were like ice, and his fear blended with her own fear as their hands met. "He'll kill you, Joe. You've got to forget me," she sobbed. "I'm not afraid of him. I'm stronger than you think. He won't dare come at me with a gun, not here before all these people. If he comes at me with his fists, I'll hook a solid left to his jaw that will stretch him out cold." She knew he wasn't deceiving himself. Joe didn't want to die any more than she did. The man from time had an impulse to get up, walk over to the two frightened children, and comfort them with a reassuring smile. He sat watching, feeling their fear beating in tumultuous waves into his brain. Fear in the minds of a boy and girl because they desperately wanted one another. He looked steadily at them, and his eyes spoke to them. Life is greater than you know. If you could travel in time and see how great is man's courage, if you could see all of his triumphs over despair and grief and pain, you would know that there is nothing to fear, nothing at all. Joe rose from the table, suddenly calm, quiet. "Come on," he said quietly. "We're getting out of here right now. My car's outside, and if Mike tries to stop us, I'll fix him." The boy and the girl walked toward the door together, a young and extremely pretty girl and a boy suddenly grown to the full stature of a man. Rather regretfully, Moonson watched them go. As they reached the door, the girl turned and smiled, and the boy paused too, and they both smiled suddenly at the man in the bathing trunks. Then they were gone. Moonson got up as they disappeared, left the tavern. It was dark when he reached the cabin. He was dog-tired, and when he saw the seated man through the lighted windows, a great longing for companionship came upon him. He forgot that he couldn't talk to the man, forgot the language difficulty completely. But before this insurmountable element occurred to him, he was inside the cabin. Once there, he saw the problem solved itself. The man was a writer, and he had been drinking steadily for hours, so the man did all the talking, not wanting or waiting for an answer. A youngish, handsome man he was, with graying temples and keenly observant eyes. The instant he saw Moonson, he started to talk. "Welcome, stranger," he said. "Been taking a dip in the ocean, eh? Can't say I'd enjoy it this late in the season." Moonson was afraid at first that his silence might discourage the writer, but he didn't know writers. "It's good to have someone to talk to," the writer went on. "I've been sitting here all day trying to write. I'll tell you something you may not know. You can go to the finest hotels and you can open case after case of the finest wine, and you still can't get started sometimes." The writer's face seemed suddenly to age. Fear came into his eyes, and he raised the bottle to his lips, faced away from his guest as he drank, as if ashamed of what he must do to escape despair every time he faced his fear. He was trying to write himself back into fame. His greatest moment had come years before, when his golden pen had glorified a generation of madcaps. For one deathless moment his genius had carried him to the heights, and in a white blaze of publicity had given him a halo of glory. Later had come lean and bitter years, until finally his reputation dwindled like a gutted candle in a wintry room at midnight. He could still write, but now fear and remorse walked with him and would give him no peace. He was cruelly afraid most of the time. Moonson listened to the writer's thoughts in heart-stricken silence. Thoughts so tragic they seemed out of keeping with the natural and beautiful rhythms of his speech. He had never imagined that a sensitive and imaginative man, an artist, could be so completely abandoned by the society his genius had helped to enrich. Back and forth the writer paced, bearing his innermost thoughts. His wife was desperately ill, and the future looked completely black. How could he summon the strength of will to go on, let alone to write? He said fiercely, "It's all right for you to talk." He stopped, seeming to realize for the first time that the big man sitting in an easy chair by the window had made no attempt to speak. It seemed incredible, but the big man had listened in complete silence, and with such quiet assurance that his silence had taken on an eloquence that inspired absolute trust. He had always known there were few people like that in the world, people whose sympathy and understanding you could take for granted. There was a fearlessness in such people which made them stand out from the crowd, stone markers in a desert waste, to lend assurance to a tired wayfarer by its sturdy permanence, its sun-mirroring strength. There are a few people like that in the world, but you sometimes win a lifetime without meeting one. The big man sat there smiling at him, calmly exuding the serenity of one who had seen life from its tangled, inaccessible roots outward, and testifies from experience that the entire growth is sound. The writer stopped pacing suddenly and drew himself erect. As he stared into the big man's eyes, his fears seemed to fade away. Confidence returned to him like the surge of the sea, in great shining waves of creativeness. He knew suddenly that he could lose himself in his work again, could tap the bright resonant bell of his genius until its golden voice rang out through eternity. He had another great book in him, and it would get written now. It would get written. "You've helped me," he almost shouted. "You've helped me more than you know. I can't tell you how grateful I am to you. You don't know what it means to be so paralyzed with fright that you can't write at all." The man from time was silent, but his eyes shone curiously. The writer turned to a bookcase and removed a volume in a faded cover that had once been bright with rainbow colors. He sat down and wrote an inscription in the flyleaf. Then he rose and handed the book to his visitor with a slight bow. He was smiling now. "This was my firstborn," he said. The man from time looked at the title first, "This Side of Paradise." Then he opened the book and read what the author had written on the flyleaf. "With warm gratefulness for a courage which brought back the sun, F. Scott Fitzgerald." Moonson bowed his thanks, turned, and left the cabin. Morning found him walking across fresh meadows, with the dew glistening on his bare head and broad straight shoulders. They'd never find him, he told himself hopelessly. They'd never find him because time was too vast to pinpoint one man in such a vast waste of years. The towering crests of each age might be visible, but there could be no returning to one tiny, insignificant spot in the mighty ocean of time. As he walked, his eyes searched for the field and the winding road he followed into town. Only yesterday this road seemed to beckon, and he had followed, eager to explore an age so primitive that mental communication from mind to mind had not yet replaced human speech. Now he knew that the speech faculty, which man had long outgrown, would never cease to act as a barrier between him and the men and women of this era of the past. Without it, he could not hope to find complete understanding and sympathy here. He was still alone, and soon winter would come, and the sky grow cold and empty. The time machine materialized so suddenly before him that for an instant his mind refused to accept it as more than a torturing illusion conjured by the turbulence of his thoughts. All at once it towered in his path, bright and shining, and he moved forward over the dew-drenched grass until he was brought up short by a joy so overwhelming that it seemed to him that his heart must burst. Rutella emerged from the machine with a gay little laugh, as if his stunned expression was the most amusing in the world. "Hold still and let me kiss you, darling," her mind said to his. She stood in the dew-bright grass on tiptoe, her sleek dark hair falling to her shoulders, an extraordinarily pretty girl to be the wife of a man so tormented. "You found me," his thoughts exulted. "You came back alone and searched until you found me." She nodded, her eyes shining. So time wasn't too vast to pinpoint after all, not when two people were so securely wedded in mind and heart that their thoughts could build a bridge across time. "The Bureau of Emotional Adjustment analyzed everything I told them. Your psychograph ran to 57 pages, but it was your desperate loneliness that guided me to you." She raised his hand to her lips and kissed it. "You see, darling, a compulsive fear isn't easy to conquer. No man or woman can conquer it alone. Historians tell us, when the first passenger rocket started for Mars, space fear took men by surprise in the same way your fear gripped you. The loneliness, the utter desolation of space, was too much for a human mind to endure." She smiled her love. "We're going back. We'll face it together, and we'll conquer it together. You won't be alone now. Darling, don't you see? It's because you aren't a clod, because you're sensitive and imaginative that you experience fear. It's not anything to be ashamed of. You were simply the first man on earth to develop a new and completely different kind of fear. Time fear." Moonson put out his hand and gently touched his wife's hair. Ascending into the time observatory, a thought came unbidden to his mind. Others he saved, himself he could not save. But that wasn't true at all now. He could help himself now. He would never be alone again.